The Judgment. The holographic display in the United Earth Defense Command Center flickered with activity as Admiral Sarah Chen watched the approaching vessels. They weren't like anything humanity had encountered in their brief ventures beyond Mars. 12 ships, each the size of a small moon, arranged themselves in a perfect dodecahedron around Earth's orbit. Multiple energy signatures detected, Admiral. Lieutenant Rogers reported, his voice steady despite the tension. They're scanning everything, from our orbital stations to our deep space mining operations. Sarah straightened her uniform, dark eyes fixed on the main display. Humanity had achieved faster-than-light travel just 3 years ago, and already the galaxy had come calling. But something about this didn't feel like a welcome wagon. The first transmission came without warning, flooding every communication channel on Earth. The being that appeared on screen was tall and ethereal, with crystalline features that seemed to shift in impossible ways. Its voice resonated with harmonics that made the air itself vibrate. "We are the collective of advanced species," it announced. "We have observed your emergence into faster-than-light capability. We have reviewed your history. We have reached our verdict." Sarah felt her blood run cold. Verdict? They hadn't even known they were being judged. Humanity represents an unacceptable risk to galactic stability. The being continued. Your species demonstrates excessive aggression, technological acceleration beyond safe parameters, and dangerous levels of adaptive capability. You have achieved in 3 centuries what took others millennia. The Admiral stepped forward. "We have the right to exist, to explore, to grow," she declared, knowing her words were being translated and broadcast. "We've unified our planet, established peaceful colonies throughout our system. You have unified only recently, and only in the face of external threats." The being interrupted. "Your history is written in blood. Your literature obsesses over conflict. Your technological development is driven by military necessity. You are too dangerous to be allowed free access to the galaxy." Screens across the command center lit up with warning signals as the alien vessels began powering up their systems. Sarah's hand moved to her sidearm instinctively, though she knew it was useless against threats of this scale. "Therefore, by unanimous decision of the collective, you will be contained. Your solar system will be your prison until you prove yourselves worthy, if ever." Energy beams shot out from each of the 12 ships, connecting in a complex geometric pattern. Where the beams intersected, space itself seemed to fold and twist. Within hours, a shimmering barrier had enclosed the entire solar system, trapping humanity within their cosmic cradle. The final message from the collective was brief. "This is mercy. Be grateful we chose containment over extinction." As the massive ships disappeared into FTL, leaving humanity behind their crystalline cage, Sarah Chen did something unexpected. She smiled. "Admiral." Lieutenant Rogers questioned, noticing her expression. "They think they've imprisoned us," she said, turning to face the command staff. "But they've just given us exactly what we need. A reason to prove them wrong, and the time to do it right." She walked to the central holodeck, pulling up displays of every human settlement and installation in the solar system. "Get me a direct line to the United Earth Council. We're going to need to restructure everything. Our industries, our research programs, our entire civilization." "For what purpose, ma'am?" Sarah's eyes gleamed with determination. "They call us dangerous because we advance too quickly, adapt too well. They fear our potential. So let's show them exactly why they should." She began marking points throughout the solar system: resource-rich asteroids, potential colony sites, research stations that could be expanded. "We're going to build something they've never seen before, a civilization that doesn't just survive in space, one that masters it completely." As her staff began to understand, the atmosphere in the command center shifted from despair to determination. The collective had meant to cage humanity. Instead, they had given them a challenge, and if there was one thing humans excelled at, it was overcoming challenges. "Send word to every colony, every station," Sarah ordered. The galaxy thinks they've contained us. They've just given us the perfect laboratory to become something far greater than they could imagine. Outside the command center viewport, Earth gleamed blue and white, now surrounded by the faint shimmer of their prison walls. But to Sarah Chen and the billions of humans watching the same sky, it didn't look like a barrier anymore. It looked like a starting line. Seeds of innovation. 20 years after the barrier's creation, Dr. Maya Patel stood in the control room of the Olympus Mons research facility, watching as robotic excavators delved deeper into the Martian crust. The massive screens before her displayed real-time data from the dig site, where humanity's most advanced mining technology was uncovering something that shouldn't exist. Secondary scan confirms it, her assistant, David, announced. The structure extends at least 2 kilometers down, and it's definitely not natural. The energy readings are, well, they're still active. Maya leaned forward, her weathered hands gripping the console. 2 decades of forced isolation had changed humanity. The solar system had become their workshop, with colonies spreading across Mars and the asteroid belt. But this discovery could change everything. "Get me Admiral Chen," Maya ordered, her voice tight with excitement. Even after 20 years, Sarah Chen remained humanity's de facto leader in space, though her hair had gone silver and her face wore the marks of countless challenges overcome. The Admiral's hologram appeared moments later. "Dr. Patel, your message said it was urgent. We found something, Sarah. Something that proves we weren't the first ones to look to the stars." Maya transmitted the scan data. "There's an entire complex down there, built by someone who came before. And it's still running." The discovery sparked the largest scientific mobilization in human history. Within months, the Olympus Mons facility had expanded into a sprawling research city. Teams of scientists and engineers worked around the clock, studying technology that operated on principles that defied conventional physics. The complex wasn't just a building. It was a library, a laboratory, and a legacy left behind by a civilization that had achieved things the collective had never dreamed possible. The beings who built it, whom they came to call the predecessors, had mastered the manipulation of space and energy in ways that made the barrier around their solar system look primitive. "Look at this," Maya said 6 months later, showing Admiral Chen through the newly excavated central chamber. Holographic displays flickered to life around them, responding to their presence. They didn't just leave their technology. They left instructions. They wanted someone to find this, to learn from it. Sarah ran her hand along a crystal panel that hummed with internal light. "Why here? Why Mars?" "Because they knew someone would come here eventually," Maya explained. "Mars is the logical first step for any spacefaring civilization in this system. They left their legacy where they knew it would be found, but only by a species ready to understand it." The implications were staggering. The predecessor's technology operated on principles that went beyond the collective's understanding of physics. They hadn't just mastered space travel. They had learned to manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe itself. "The barrier," Sarah said suddenly, her eyes widening. "The collective's technology. It's crude compared to this, isn't it?" Maya nodded, pulling up a comparison on one of the ancient displays. "They're using a hammer where a scalpel would do." The predecessors understood something fundamental about the nature of space-time that the collective never discovered. And now we have access to all of it. Research teams began to crack the predecessors' database. Their language was mathematical, universal, designed to be understood by any species capable of reaching their facility. Each discovery led to 3 more, a cascade of knowledge that transformed human understanding of the universe. "We can't just copy their technology," Maya insisted during a global conference. "We need to understand it, adapt it, make it our own. The predecessors didn't leave us weapons or ships. They left us knowledge. How we use it is up to us." Sarah Chen, watching the presentation from her office on Phobos Station, felt a familiar smile cross her face. The collective had imprisoned humanity to prevent them from advancing too quickly. Instead, they had given them access to knowledge they would never have found if they'd been allowed to expand into the galaxy immediately. "Begin Phase 2, she ordered, sending the command that would initiate the next stage of humanity's development. Across the solar system, construction yards and research facilities received their new directives. They weren't just going to study the predecessor's technology. They were going to surpass it. The barriers that contained them still shimmered in space, but they no longer looked like prison walls. To the humans working in the shadows of Mars' ancient ruins, they looked more and more like a cocoon, one from which humanity would emerge transformed. As Maya Patil stood in the heart of the predecessor's complex, watching another team of researchers unlock another piece of the cosmic puzzle, she thought about the collective's judgment. They had called humanity dangerous because they advanced too quickly, adapted too readily. They had no idea just how right they were. Breaking boundaries. 50 years after the discovery of the predecessor's complex, Captain Aisha Rahman guided her ship through the rings of Saturn, its quantum engines humming with power that would have seemed magical just decades ago. The vessel, sleek and organic in design, moved with a grace that defied traditional physics. "Titan Control, this is Starweaver approaching docking vector," she transmitted, watching the massive research station grow larger in her viewport. The station wasn't just built in space. It was grown there, using crystalline technology adapted from the predecessor's database. "Acknowledged, Starweaver. You're cleared for approach to Quantum Lab 7. The controller responded. "Dr. Patil is waiting for your arrival." Maya Patil, now in her 80s but kept vital by advanced medical technology, had become the architect of humanity's technological revolution. The Titan Research Station was her masterpiece, a facility dedicated to understanding and expanding upon the predecessor's greatest achievements. As Aisha docked her ship, she marveled at how far humanity had come. The solar system was unrecognizable from 50 years ago. Mercury had been transformed into a massive energy collection system, its surface covered in quantum capacitors that captured and stored power in ways the collective had never imagined. Venus hosted floating cities in its upper atmosphere, their structures adapting continuously to the harsh conditions. Mars, once a red desert, now boasted seas and the beginnings of an atmosphere, transformed by technologies that worked with natural processes rather than against them. The asteroid belt had become a network of interconnected habitats and manufacturing centers, producing materials with properties that defied conventional physics. "Welcome back, Captain," Maya greeted her as Aisha entered the quantum lab. "I trust you brought what we needed." Aisha produced a small crystal matrix from her ship's cargo, raw materials processed in zero gravity using principles learned from the predecessors. "Enough quantum-stable matter for the final tests. Are we ready?" Maya's eyes sparkled with the same enthusiasm that had driven her for 5 decades. "More than ready. The barrier analysis is complete. We understand now why the collective's containment field was so crude. They never grasped the fundamental nature of space-time folding." The lab's main chamber housed their greatest achievement, a prototype device that represented humanity's complete mastery of the predecessor's principles. It wasn't just a copy of ancient technology. It was something entirely new, created by combining human innovation with recovered knowledge. "The collective thinks space is like a fabric that can be bent and folded," Maya explained, bringing up a holographic model. "But the predecessors understood that it's more like a thought, something that can be reimagined entirely. We don't need to break through the barrier. We can simply step around it." Aisha watched as the prototype powered up, its crystalline structure pulsing with internal light. "When do we begin full-scale tests?" "Tomorrow," Maya said, her voice firm. "Admiral Chen's successor has given us authorization to proceed. If it works." "When it works," Aisha corrected gently. Maya smiled. "When it works, we'll have proven that humanity didn't just survive containment, we transcended it. The collective tried to imprison us, but they really just gave us the time and motivation to become something far greater than they could have imagined." Throughout the solar system, similar preparations were underway. Quantum communication networks, undetectable by conventional sensors, linked every human settlement. Ships were being retrofitted with new technologies that operated on principles the collective wouldn't be able to understand, let alone counter. You know what's ironic? Aisha mused, watching the prototype's power signature stabilize. If they had let us expand into the galaxy naturally, we would have developed along conventional lines. We would have used their kind of technology, followed their rules. By forcing us to look inward, they made us look deeper. Maya nodded, her aged hands moving across the control panel with practiced ease. They feared our potential for rapid advancement, our ability to adapt and innovate. So they gave us the perfect environment to develop those very traits to their fullest extent. The prototype's energy field expanded, creating a sphere of distorted space-time that reminded Aisha of soap bubbles she played with as a child on Earth. But this bubble wasn't just bending space, it was redefining it entirely. Begin final calibration sequence, Maya ordered, her voice carrying the weight of 50 years of preparation. Tomorrow, we show the galaxy what humanity has become. As the test proceeded, Aisha looked out the lab's viewport at the barrier that still surrounded their solar system. For most of her life, it had been a constant reminder of humanity's containment. Now, it looked less like a prison wall and more like a starting line, one they were finally ready to cross. The collective had meant to contain humanity until they proved themselves worthy. They never considered that the containment itself would be the forge in which humanity would reshape themselves into something unprecedented in the galaxy's history. The escape. In the vast chamber of the collective's High Council, alarms blared for the first time in 10,000 years. The crystalline beings who had sentenced humanity to containment gathered in emergency session, their forms shimmering with agitation. Impossible, the first speaker declared, its multifaceted form refracting light in patterns of distress. The barrier cannot be breached. Our containment technology is absolute. But the evidence playing across their quantum displays told a different story. The barrier around Sol's system was intact, unchanged, and yet somehow human ships were appearing throughout nearby space, not breaking through the barrier, not damaging it, but simply appearing, as if they had always been there. Across the galaxy, collective observation posts reported the same phenomenon. Human vessels of unusual design, operating on principles their sensors couldn't fully comprehend, emerging from what appeared to be folds in spacetime itself. Back in the solar system, Captain Aisha Rahman stood on the bridge of the Quantum Leap, humanity's first true spacetime transcendence vessel. The ship wasn't large, barely 200 meters in length, but it represented the pinnacle of humanity's fusion of predecessor knowledge and human innovation. All stations report ready, her first officer, Commander Chen, announced. The young woman was Admiral Chen's granddaughter, carrying on her family's legacy of leading humanity into new frontiers. Quantum matrix stable, reported Dr. Maya Patel's voice through the comm. The elderly scientist was monitoring the operation from Titan Station, her lifetime of work culminating in this moment. You have full power for the jump. Aisha took a deep breath, looking at the barrier that had contained humanity for so long. Begin transcendence sequence. Remember, we're not trying to break through. We're simply stepping sideways through possibility. The ship's quantum engines hummed to life, but unlike conventional drives, they didn't propel the vessel through space. Instead, they rewrote the very concept of where the ship existed. Reality seemed to blur around them, not in the violent way of conventional FTL travel, but in a gentle shift, like changing the focus of one's eyes. Transcendence field stable, Commander Chen reported. Ready for transition on your mark. Aisha smiled, thinking of all the generations that had worked toward this moment. Execute. There was no flash of light, no surge of acceleration. One moment they were inside the barrier, the next, they were beyond it, their transition so smooth it almost went unnoticed. The barrier still gleamed in space behind them, completely undamaged. Position confirmed, Chen announced, her voice tight with excitement. We're 50 light-years from Sol. all systems nominal. Across the solar system, hundreds of other ships were making similar transitions. Each one carried a piece of humanity's new civilization. Diplomats, scientists, colonists, all prepared to show the galaxy what humanity had become during their imprisonment. The collective's response was immediate and predictable. A fleet of their most powerful warships converged on the human vessels, weapons primed. But as they approached, their sensors began reporting confusing data. The human ships seemed to exist in multiple states simultaneously, their quantum nature making them almost impossible to target. "This is Captain Aisha Rahman of the Earth Quantum Fleet. She broadcast on all frequencies. We mean no harm. We simply wish to demonstrate that humanity has grown beyond the need for containment." The collective ships opened fire, or tried to. Their energy weapons passed through the human vessels as if they were ghosts, their targeting systems unable to lock onto ships that could actively rewrite their position in space-time. "As you can see," Aisha continued calmly, "we could have left our containment at any time in the past decade. We chose to wait until we were certain we could do so without causing harm or destruction. Your barrier remains intact. We simply learned to step around it." In the collective council chamber, the first speaker watched in growing astonishment as reports flooded in. The humans weren't just demonstrating advanced technology. They were wielding principles of physics that the collective had never even theorized. "How?" it demanded. "How did they achieve this in mere decades?" The answer came from an unexpected source, one of their own scientists who had been studying human development. "You gave them exactly what they needed," the scientist explained. "Isolation, challenge, motivation, and most importantly, you forced them to look inward instead of outward. They found something in their system that we never did, the ruins of those who came before, who understood the universe far better than we do." As human ships continued to emerge across the galaxy, they didn't attack, didn't seek revenge. Instead, they established peaceful contact with various civilizations, offering to share their unique perspective on the universe. "We don't want war," Aisha explained to the gathered collective representatives. "We want to share what we've learned. Your containment taught us patience, forced us to develop in ways we never would have otherwise. We're grateful for that lesson." The human ships hung in space like dreams made real, their quantum nature making them seem almost alive. They were the product of a civilization that had taken its imprisonment and turned it into an opportunity for transcendence. The age of containment was over. The age of quantum humanity had begun. New dawn. 5 years after humanity's emergence from containment, the galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The grand halls of the collective's central meeting place, once reserved exclusively for the oldest spacefaring races, now hosted a remarkable gathering. Dr. Maya Patel, now approaching her 90s but still sharp as ever, stood before the assembled representatives of 1,000 worlds. Behind her, a holographic display showed the solar system she had helped transform, no longer a prison, but a shining example of what civilization could achieve. "The universe is not what you thought it was," she began, her voice carrying the weight of decades of discovery. "The barriers between possible and impossible are far more fluid than anyone imagined. We learned this not because we were special, but because we were forced to look deeper." The audience included not just collective members, but representatives from younger species who had been inspired by humanity's example. The quantum principles humanity had mastered had revolutionized everything from space travel to energy production, medicine to communications. Captain Aisha Rahman, now Admiral Rahman, stood at a quantum observatory near Alpha Centauri, watching ships from dozens of species learning to navigate using the new principles. The quantum drive technology, once humanity's closely guarded secret, was being shared with civilizations that proved they would use it responsibly. Another successful transition, her aide reported as a collective vessel completed its first quantum jump. "They're learning quickly." "Of course they are," Aisha smiled. "Once you understand that space and time are more like suggestions than rules, everything becomes possible. The changes weren't just technological. The collective itself had undergone a transformation, forced to confront the limitations of their own thinking. Their policy of containment had been abandoned, replaced by a new approach of guidance and cooperation. In the solar system, the barrier remained as a reminder, not of imprisonment, but of transformation. Some of humanity's cities and research centers had chosen to remain within its boundaries, continuing to explore and develop in the cradle that had fostered their greatest achievements. Commander Chen, now captain of her own quantum vessel, led diplomatic missions to worlds that had never been contacted by the collective. "We were judged too dangerous because we advanced too quickly," she would explain. But speed of advancement isn't what matters. It's the wisdom to understand the responsibility that comes with it. The predecessor's complex on Mars had become a university, where beings from across the galaxy came to study not just the ancient knowledge, but how humanity had built upon it. The quantum cities of Venus's upper atmosphere hosted researchers working to apply these principles to environmental restoration. Mercury's energy collection system powered humanitarian projects on dozens of worlds. "We could have emerged years earlier," Maya explained to the collective council during a private session. "We could have used our discoveries as weapons, sought revenge for our containment. But that would have proved you right about us." The first speaker, its crystalline form somehow humbler now, nodded. "Instead, you proved us wrong in the most profound way possible. We feared you would bring chaos to the galaxy. Instead, you brought enlightenment." But perhaps the most significant change was in how the galaxy viewed advancement itself. The belief that all species must develop along the same prescribed path had been shattered. Young civilizations were now encouraged to find their own way, to look within their own systems for unique opportunities and knowledge. "The universe is vast," Aisha told a group of cadets at the new Quantum Academy. "But the greatest distances we have to cross aren't between stars. They're between what we think is possible and what actually is." In the depths of space, human quantum ships dance through reality like dreams given form, their very existence a testament to what could be achieved when necessity and innovation combined with wisdom and determination. They had become living proof that imprisonment could lead to enlightenment, that isolation could spawn connection, that limitation could breed transcendence. The barrier that had meant to contain humanity still shimmered in space, but now it stood as a monument to an eternal truth. The greatest prison is the belief in limitations, and the greatest freedom comes from the courage to imagine beyond them. Maya Patel, in what would be her last public address, summed it up perfectly. "They tried to contain us until we proved ourselves worthy. In doing so, they gave us the opportunity to become something far greater than anyone imagined. The question was never whether we were worthy of the galaxy. It was whether we could become worthy of our own potential. And in that becoming, humanity had not just earned their place among the stars, they had helped the entire galaxy dream bigger dreams."